Brad Pitt is worth $400 million. He has also spent years in a group therapy room, admitting he was, in his own words, on his knees. Both of those things are true at the same time, and this is the story of how they got that way. So let's get into it. Here's where we start. It's 2016. Brad Pitt is one of the biggest movie stars alive, married to Angelina Jolie, sitting on a fortune that will eventually be estimated at $400 million. And he is, by his own description, falling apart. The unraveling started on a private plane. Jolie filed for divorce that September, and the split traced back to an alleged altercation on a flight that Pitt and his then-wife took with their 6 children, during which Pitt allegedly choked one child and struck another in the face, grabbed Jolie by the head and shook her, then poured beer and red wine on her and the kids. Police investigated. No charges were ever filed, but the marriage was over. And so, in a lot of ways, was the version of Brad Pitt the public thought it knew. 9 years later, Pitt sat down on Dax Shepard's podcast and said the quiet part out loud. He told Shepard he'd joined an all-male Alcoholics Anonymous group in 2016. Right after the divorce filing, and he didn't dress it up. I was pretty much on my back, on my knees. I was trying anything anyone threw at me. It was a particular difficult time. I needed rebooting. I needed to wake the F-cut up in some areas. That's not a man talking about a rough patch. That's a man describing the floor. He'd said something similar back in 2019 when he first went public about getting sober. He told the New York Times, "I had taken things as far as I could take it, so I removed my drinking privileges." No lawyers wrote that line for him. No publicist softened it. That's Brad Pitt, a 2-time Oscar winner, a man whose face has sold movie tickets for over 3 decades, telling a reporter he had to cut himself off from himself. And here's the thing about the money. The $400 million didn't stop any of it. It didn't stop the plane. It didn't stop the drinking. It didn't stop what came next. An 8-year legal war over custody. A winery fight that would eventually put a $164 million price tag on a piece of French real estate. And a slow public procession of his own children, legally erasing his last name from theirs. The fortune kept growing through all of it. The family did not. That's the paradox this story sits inside. A man who can command $30 million for a single film role, who built a production company that produced Best Picture winners, who has a real estate portfolio spread across 2 continents, and who, at the same time, hasn't stood in a room with all 6 of his kids since the year the plane incident happened. Wealth insulated him from almost nothing that actually mattered. So how does a guy who has it all end up describing himself as on his knees? To understand that, you have to go back to where the having it all part started, because the same instincts that built the empire are, in a lot of ways, the same instincts that blew up the family. And once you see how he built it, you'll understand exactly why losing control of it hit as hard as it did. That takes us back to 1991, to a hitchhiking scene in a Ridley Scott movie, and to the moment a small-town Missouri kid became, almost overnight, the most bankable face in Hollywood. Before there was a $400 million fortune, there was a guy who dropped out of the University of Missouri 2 credits short of a journalism degree and drove to Los Angeles to become an actor. That's not embellishment. That's just the starting point. Nobody handed Brad Pitt anything. He built the appeal from scratch, one small role at a time, until Hollywood couldn't ignore him. The break came in 1991. In 1991, Pitt landed the role of J.D., the charming drifter in Ridley Scott's Thelma and Louise. His screen time was brief, but the charisma he brought to the role made him unforgettable. That's the entire pivot point of his career in 2 sentences. A handful of minutes on screen, and suddenly every studio in town wanted him. Hollywood suddenly saw him as the new heartthrob, and major studios lined up with leading offers. Brad had crossed the line from aspiring actor to bankable star. What's worth noticing here, because it matters later, is that Pitt didn't coast on the heartthrob label. He could have, plenty of actors do. Instead, he started making strange, uncomfortable choices almost immediately. He deliberately played against type as an Austrian mountain climber, an IRA terrorist, a modern-day personification of death, and an underground boxer in Fight Club. That instinct, take the money roll, then immediately spend the capital on something riskier, is the same instinct that would later drive him into business. He was never satisfied being just the face on the poster. By 2000, Pitt was married to Jennifer Aniston, at the time the biggest sitcom star on television. The following year, he made a move that had nothing to do with acting and everything to do with control. In 2001, Pitt co-founded Plan B Entertainment with Brad Gray and then wife Jennifer Aniston, changing the definition of what the phrase Brad Pitt movies means. He wasn't content to just take a paycheck for showing up on camera. He wanted to own the thing that decided what got made. That decision is the hinge of this whole story, and it's easy to miss why. Actors get paid, producers get paid, and get ownership. Pitt figured out, at 37 years old, that if you want real leverage in an industry built on other people's money, you don't just star in the picture. You own a piece of the studio that makes it. It's the same principle behind almost every fortune in entertainment that outlasts a career. Equity outperforms a salary every time, if you're patient enough to let it compound. Then the marriage that built the company fell apart. Their 2005 split, fueled by rumors of Pitt's closeness with Angelina Jolie during Mr. and Mrs. Smith, dominated headlines worldwide. And here's the detail that gets buried under all the tabloid noise. When Pitt and Aniston divorced, he didn't walk away from Plan B. Pitt assumed sole ownership of Plan B in 2005, following his and Aniston's divorce. He kept the business, he lost the wife. That pattern, hold on to the asset, let the relationship go, would repeat itself at a much higher cost a decade later. With full control of Plan B, Pitt turned the company into one of the most respected shops in the business. It wasn't vanity projects. Plan B had a remarkable run of high-profile and award-nominated films, including Best Picture nominees The Departed, The Tree of Life, Moneyball, 12 Years a Slave, Selma, The Big Short, Moonlight, and Vice. In 2014, the Producers Guild handed the company its Visionary Award. Then, in 2014, Plan B produced 12 Years a Slave and it won Best Picture. Producers Brad Pitt, Dee Gardner, and Jeremy Kleiner accepted the statuette on stage, emphasizing the film's role in confronting America's history of slavery. Pitt now had an Oscar that had nothing to do with his face, and everything to do with his judgment as a businessman. That's a different kind of currency in Hollywood, the kind that says you're not just a star, you're a mogul. By this point, he was also deep into the relationship that would define the next 20 years of his public life. He and Jolie had been together since 2005, adopting and raising children across 3 continents, running a blended family of 6 kids. In 2008, they bought a controlling stake in a French winery called Chateau Miraval, a controlling interest in Miraval in the village of Correns in southeastern France, between Marseille and Nice. They were married there in 2014. On paper, it read like the peak of a charmed life. 2 of the most famous actors on Earth, a growing empire of prestige films, a vineyard in the south of France where they said their vows. Underneath it, though, something was already cracking. Pitt has since admitted that fame itself had never sat easily with him. He told reporters years later that back in the 90s, when the attention first hit, all that attention really threw me. It was really uncomfortable for me. The cacophony of expectations and judgments. I really became a bit of a hermit and just bonged myself into oblivion. That's not a throwaway line. That's a man telling you, decades before the plane incident, that he had a coping mechanism problem, long before anyone was watching for it. So by 2016, you have a 52-year-old man with an Oscar, a production empire, a wine estate, and a marriage to the world's most photographed actress. And you also have a man who has quietly been self-medicating discomfort with substances since his 20s. The empire was real. So was the crack running underneath it. And that September, on a private plane somewhere over the Pacific, the crack finally gave way. Which brings us to the incident that actually detonated everything. The one that turned a private marital breakdown into an 8-year public war, and the one that set every domino after it in motion. To understand why this became the mess it became, you have to sit with what actually happened on that flight in September 2016, because everything downstream, the custody war, the estrangement, the name changes, traces back to those minutes in the air. According to Jolie's legal filings, during the flight, Pitt allegedly choked one of the children and struck another in the face, grabbed Jolie by the head and shook her, then poured beer and red wine on her and their 6 children. Jolie filed for divorce almost immediately after landing. The breakup was spurred by a reported physical dispute involving their children aboard a private plane, erupting into an 8-year legal war. Police probed Pitt's involvement, but never filed any charges. No charges. That's an important detail, and it stayed true for nearly a decade. But the absence of a criminal conviction didn't stop the fallout from becoming one of the most brutal, longest-running custody battles in modern Hollywood history. This is where you start to see wealth work against him, not for him. Money buys lawyers. It doesn't buy trust, and it doesn't buy your kids back. Once they've decided, they've seen enough. In May 2021, 5 years into the fight, a private judge ruled Pitt and Jolie would share custody of their children 50-50. That should have been a turning point, a legal win, evidence that the system saw him as fit to parent. Instead, the ruling got overturned. In 2022, the actress was re-granted sole physical custody of her minor children. After Pitt had been granted joint custody for a short period of time, Pitt was then allowed custodial time with his minor children. And then the kids started making their own decisions. Decisions no custody order could reverse. One by one, as each of them turned 18, they began legally dropping his name. Shiloh went first. On the day she turned 18, Shiloh Jolie Pitt filed court documents, requesting Pitt be removed from her legal last name. Sources close to the family made clear this wasn't a casual decision. Shiloh's decision to change her name is linked to her parents' custody battle, with sources suggesting she felt her rights as a victim were violated, leading to her independent choice to drop her father's name. She reportedly hired and paid for her own lawyer to do it. Then Zahara followed. Then Maddox, who by then had already testified against his father in the custody proceedings, with one source noting, Maddox has already given testimony as an adult in the ongoing custody dispute, and it wasn't very flattering toward Brad. Then Vivian. Then Knox quietly listed himself as Knox Jolie on his own high school diploma, without even bothering with the paperwork. By the time the youngest twins turned 18 in 2026, the arithmetic was brutal and simple. 5 of Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie's children, Maddox, Zahara, Shiloh, Knox, and Vivian, have chosen to drop Pitt's last name, with 2 of them taking formal legal steps to remove it. Only Pax hasn't filed paperwork, though he's been publicly visibly protective of his mother throughout. And the man at the center of it hasn't been photographed with any of his 6 children, together or separately, since the year the plane incident happened. Brad has not been spotted in public with any of his 6 kids since 2016. Pitt's own team has tried to frame his reaction as heartbreak rather than anger. A source close to him said he still calls them constantly, that estrangement has simply become a way of life, and that no matter what happens, he is always only a phone call away. He's reportedly told people he holds out hope that once the legal dust fully settles, he'll get, in the words of one insider, a fair shot at being part of their lives again. That's the language of a man negotiating. Still, after everything, trying to work the relationship the way he'd work a deal. But here's the strategic lesson buried in this chapter, and it's the one that carries into everything that follows. Control that works in a boardroom does not translate to control over people who've decided to walk away. Pitt spent 2 decades building leverage in contracts, in ownership stakes, in production deals. None of that leverage worked on his own children. The custody rulings flipped. The kids aged out of the legal fight entirely and simply left on their own terms. For a man whose entire adult life had been defined by winning negotiations, This was the first fight Leverage couldn't win, and while all of that was unfolding in family court, a second front had already opened up, one where Pitt's business instincts and his personal grievances collided head-on over the one physical place that had once symbolized everything good about the marriage, the winery where he and Jolie had said their vows. If the custody battle was the emotional core of Pitt's collapse, the fight over Chateau Miraval is where the money and the wreckage finally merged into one single, ugly, ongoing lawsuit. And it's still not over. Here's the setup. Pitt and Jolie bought the winery together in 2008, poured money into it for years, and by most accounts built it into one of the most respected rosé producers in the world, with reported annual revenue exceeding $50 million. Then, in January 2021, Jolie told Pitt she'd made what she called a painful decision with a heavy heart to sell her Miraval stake, saying she could no longer own an alcohol-based business because of her personal objections. Buyout talks between the two of them broke down 5 months later, and that's when things got ugly. Jolie sold her half of the winery to a company controlled by Yuri Shefler, a Russian-born billionaire who built his fortune on Stolichnaya vodka. Pitt claims he never consented to that sale, and that he and Jolie had an agreement requiring mutual sign-off before either of them could sell their stake to an outside party. So in February 2022, he sued her. In February 2022, Pitt filed suit against Jolie in Los Angeles Superior Court. The initial complaint sought $35 million in damages. He accused her of executing the sale with malice, in deliberate violation of their agreement. Jolie's side has denied all of it and countersued, with her company accusing Pitt of hijacking the Miraval business and wasting corporate assets, including, in one striking detail buried in the countersuit, an allegation that Pitt spent $1 million on swimming pool renovations at the chateau, during a period when he had no corporate authority to do so. Think about that for a second. Two of the wealthiest people in the entertainment industry, litigating over pool renovations at a vineyard, years after their marriage ended. That's not really about the pool. That's what a decade of unresolved anger looks like when it finally gets a legal venue to play out in. Jolie's team has pushed back hard on the idea that any of this is really about protecting the business. In court filings, her lawyers argued there's no evidence anywhere that Pitt's ability to live at the chateau has been impacted by this case one iota. She's also alleged, through her attorneys, that his refusal to buy her out earlier was tied to something darker, that Pitt wanted her to sign a non-disclosure agreement first, one she claims was intended to cover up alleged abuse of her and their kids. Pitt's side denies that framing entirely. The legal fight has ground on for years, through motion after motion. A judge threw out Jolie's attempts to get the case dismissed, which one source close to Pitt's camp called a moment where the judge found credibility in Brad's case, paving the way for the matter to proceed to trial. This latest ruling represents another pre-trial victory for Pitt, adding to his momentum in the ongoing legal battle. More recently, courts have compelled executives from Shefler's company to sit for deposition, with one appeals court rejecting Shefler's claim that he barely knew what was happening in the deal, writing that it defies credulity that Shefler, a sophisticated businessman, would risk almost $40 million on a transaction about which he knew nothing and with which he had no involvement. The dollar figures involved have ballooned well past that original $35 million ask. The winery itself has been valued at $164 million in some court filings tied to the sale, and the legal bills alone have reportedly cost Pitt more than $10 million and counting, just on his side of the case. Here's what makes this fight so revealing about the man at the center of it. Pitt is not litigating this because he needs the money. $400 million does not need another $67 million to feel secure. He's litigating it because, for him, Miraval was never just an investment. It was the place where the marriage was supposed to have worked. The physical proof that the family had, for a while, actually built something together. Losing control of it to a stranger without his sign-off wasn't a financial loss. It was the last domino in a chain that started on a plane in 2016. The marriage collapsed, then the custody went sideways, then the kids started leaving, and now the actual ground the family stood on, literally, the vineyard where they married, had been sold out from under him too. So by the mid-2020s, Pitt is fighting two wars simultaneously that both trace back to the same 6 years. One is about his children, who are systematically removing his name from their own. The other is about a piece of French land that used to mean something and now just means depositions. And through all of it, his net worth kept climbing anyway, because the machine that generates his wealth, the acting career and the production empire, never stopped running, even while the man's personal life was in total collapse. That gap, the fortune that never slowed down, next to a family that never came back together, is exactly where this story has to land. By the time Brad Pitt turned 60, the math on his life had split into two completely separate ledgers, and neither one canceled the other out. On the wealth side, everything kept compounding. In 2022, he sold a majority stake in Plan B Entertainment for a deal reportedly worth hundreds of millions of dollars, but less than $500 million, cashing in on 2 decades of building the company from scratch after the Aniston divorce. He kept commanding top-dollar paychecks, recent paychecks hitting $30 million for Apple TV's F1, and $35 million for Wolf's, his 2024 thriller with George Clooney. The F1 movie, which leaned on his decades of movie star wattage to sell an entire sport to a global audience, became one of his biggest commercial swings in years. His real estate holdings kept climbing too, with a portfolio spread across the US and Europe, reportedly worth over $117 million. None of it slowed down. If anything, his 60s turned into one of the more lucrative stretches of his career. On the other side of the ledger, the personal accounting told a completely different story. He got sober, and he's been open about what that actually took. 18 months in an all-male AA group. A decision he described as removing his own drinking privileges, because he'd taken things as far as he could. That relationship led him to a real, if unlikely, friendship. Dax Shepard, who he met through the group, and who remembered that despite the fame, Pitt was, in his words, insanely gracious to the other attendees. Pitt has said the anonymity of those rooms gave him something money never could, a place where nobody was impressed by him and nobody wanted anything from him. You had all these men sitting around being open and honest in a way I have never heard, he told the New York Times. It was this safe space where there was little judgment, and therefore little judgment of yourself. He's also moved on romantically in a relationship with fashion executive Ines de Ramon, with a source close to him noting he's still happy with Ines, even as the separation from his 6 children continues to weigh on him. That's the picture that's emerged in recent years. A man who has, by every external measure, rebuilt his career and his personal stability, while one specific wound has simply refused to close. Because here's the part that no paycheck fixed. As of the most recent filings, 5 of his 6 children have taken legal steps to remove his name from theirs, and he hasn't stood in the same room with any of them together since the plane. The winery war with Jolie is still grinding through the California court system, still generating new motions, new depositions, new headlines, nearly a decade after it started. The divorce itself, the actual dissolution of the marriage, wasn't even finalized until years after the split, a reminder that even the legal ending of this relationship took nearly a decade to process. So does the title hold up? Look at the actual shape of it. The man is worth $400 million. That number is real, and it kept growing through every single year of the chaos, through the plane, through the divorce filing, through the custody reversal, through the AA meetings, through the winery lawsuit, through his own kids changing their names in public court filings. None of that touched the balance sheet. What it touched was everything money was never built to protect. He said it himself in his own words, describing a moment when none of the wealth, none of the Oscars, none of the production credits meant anything at all. He was on his knees trying anything anyone threw at him, needing to wake up in some areas of his own life that the fortune had let him ignore for years. That's the actual shape of this story. Not a rise, then a fall, then a redemption arc that wraps up clean. It's a man who built one of the most durable fortunes in modern Hollywood, and who simultaneously, over the exact same years, lost the thing that fortune was supposed to be protecting. He got his sobriety back, he got his career back, arguably stronger than it's ever been. What he hasn't gotten back, what no amount of money has been able to buy, negotiate, or litigate its way toward, is a phone call from 5 of his own children using his name. The wealth was never really the story. It was just the thing that made the fall visible to everyone else.